Dr. Schmidt, let me start with you. I'm very concerned about the consolidation of the defense industrial base. This is a multi-decade problem, but one that has really accelerated in recent years. And we're seeing this problem now with emerging technologies. The subject of this hearing today were just a few large companies, like the ones that, frankly, you represent or have represented and worked for, own a lot of the technology or can buy it up. 2 years ago, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense sat right where you gentlemen are sitting and complained about Google in particular. I was so struck that I went and I pulled the transcript. The Secretary of Defense said, I'm talking about Google and their support to China and their lack of support for the Department of Defense. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dunford, said the work that Google is doing in China is directly or indirectly benefiting the Chinese military. They went on to say, we're watching with great concern industry partners work in China, knowing that there's indirect benefit. And of course, Project Maven is what they were talking about at the time, but there's also the controversy about Boston Dynamics and the robotics collective. Here's my question. How can we ensure robust competition so that we have a competitive market for emerging technologies that isn't dominated by just a few big firms?
Well, first, I'm no longer at Google. And I disagreed with the activities that you're describing, and indeed I worked for the DoD during that period. So my personal views are clear. I think there's good news.
You think Google made the wrong decision? Sorry, is that what you're saying, Dr. Schmidt?
Let me just leave my statement as what I said.
I didn't hear your statement. You're on the record now. So since you just reintroduced it, why don't you answer my question? Are you saying that you disagree with?
I disagreed at the time with the decisions at Google.
That the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense were talking about, just to be clear.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And it's important to know that during that time I was an employee of the DoD. So my view was clear. So with respect to, there's good news that there are plenty of companies that now want to work for the military, work with and for the military. Part of the problem they have is they're having trouble getting through the valley of death. They have a good idea, they can't get into the right procurements, they don't have access. The DoD has set up a set of initiatives, DIU being one. There are a number of other ones that are quite good. And so I think to the degree you have a concern about concentration around, for example, Google, your best strategy is to have as many touch points where private sector innovators can work with the DoD. I should also note that Google's competitors, Microsoft and Amazon, made very different decisions than Google did during that time.
Let me ask you, Mr. Smith, speaking of Microsoft, the use of Chinese-made hardware like printed circuit boards poses a significant cybersecurity concern for the United States. I think some of my colleagues have mentioned this earlier. Does Microsoft use Chinese printed circuit boards in the systems you provide to the Department of Defense?
I would have to go look specifically. We have been diversifying our
supply chain.
Just
before you move on for that, will you do that and get me an answer on that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Great.
I will say more broadly, two things are important. One is we, like other companies that produce hardware, have been diversifying our supply chain, which means less reliance on China, more focus, including on printed circuit boards from Taiwan, as well as in other countries in Southeast Asia and Mexico, and even we're looking at the United States itself. The second thing I would say is for anything that is going to involve national security systems, use for, say, the U.S. Army, every component is reviewed by the U.S. government itself in terms of where we're sourcing it.
I'm glad to hear about your diversification. I heard your remarks on that earlier. Let me just press you on this point, though. Will you commit to ending Microsoft's use of Chinese printed circuit boards if, in fact, you are still using them?
I would like to learn more. I would be happy to send you a letter and we'll give you a commitment. I believe we may no longer be using any printed circuit boards from China.
That would be,
I'd like to go
that would be good. That would be good. If you are, though, will you commit to ending the practice?
I've learned enough over the years that I should be informed by the other employees at our company before I give a definitive answer, but I will be happy, Senator, to give you a definitive answer.
Okay. You're not going to give me one here today, though, it sounds like.
I'd like to give you an informed and definitive answer.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we hear that a lot before this committee. Would you at least commit to being transparent and notifying DOD about which systems contain Chinese printed circuit boards if in fact you're continuing to use them? Would you give me that commitment?
I believe we already are. If we're not, that's not, of course, we want to be transparent with DOD with all of the components that are going into this.
Okay, good. Okay, so so yes, you will do that.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, outstanding. Mr. Chairman, I see that my time has expired. I've got some more questions for you, Mr. Smith, and also for you, Dr. Schmidt, but I'll give them to you for the here. Thanks for your work. Thank you.